Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on another episode of the Handle That podcast. And we're just going to jump right into it. I was having a conversation with one of my homeboys today, and we were basically talking about, people's roles in relationships and how relationships, don't necessarily last very long anymore. And, one thing I've always wanted to know, I've always wanted to sit down with, a few different people and get their perspectives on it. Why do people stay in toxic relationships? Why do people stay in shit relationships and then get upset when the outcome that made it a shit relationship happens over and over and over again? So case in point, if you're in an abusive relationship, whether you are the man or the woman and you are being abused, why do you stay in that relationship? Right? I saw this video on Facebook, and what the young lady was saying in the video was something that I've heard hundreds of times before. It was a video of her fighting this guy, and he was winning. He was beating her up. Let's go up with it. He was beating her up pretty bad too, and nobody was helping her. And then when somebody, when people actually jumped in to help her and broke it up, they were like, hey, you need to leave him the fuck alone, girl. He ain't no good for you, and blah, 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 blah. And what she said was, she says, oh my God, he does this to me all the fucking time. I don't understand why. And I'm like, okay, all right, hold on. Let's stop right there. If you find yourself saying, oh, such and such does this to me all the time, why are you still with this person? What about this person makes him so good that you just have to stick around and deal with that bullshit? I just really want to know. There's a joke, or there was a joke on a post that I made. All of this is going to be relative, but there was a joke on a post I made, and I said, why do women stick with abusive guys? For whatever reason, I posted that, and the responses kind of shocked me. And I don't know if they were joking, but I don't think they were, because one thing you got to know about jokes is that every joke is based out of truth. So whenever you hear your favorite comedian make a very funny ass joke, that joke stemmed from truth, and it was just, the comedic value was just added on top to make it funny. And so when I asked the question, why do women stay in abusive relationships, a lot, and I mean a lot of the comments were like, oh, because the sex game is A1. This one girl was like, oh, because the dick game is a category 5. And I'm like, okay. So you were willing to stay in a domestically violent relationship just because the sex game is really good? There's not another person you could find with a rather good sex game who won't beat you the fuck up. I just do not understand the logic behind that. Where does it make sense that you go out here, you find somebody, you find something in common, you get in a relationship, you start arguing, excuse me, you start arguing, and now you're getting beat on repeatedly, over and over, and it doesn't even have to be, physical violence. It could be mental abuse. It could be abuse of finances. It could be abuse of trust. It could be abuse of all this shit. But for some strange reason, you stick with this person, right? I made a reference to this in the podcast I have with Coach Lyndon Reed. Right? I made a reference to this when I said a lot of people are in shit relationships, but what you lacked as a child, you crave as an adult. So a lot of people are in shit relationships, but they find it hard to let that relationship go because of the connection that they built with this person. So for example, if you were a kid who you didn't necessarily feel loved, you didn't necessarily feel wanted, you didn't necessarily feel there was value in you from the other people around you, right? You may have been teased, you may have been abused yourself in any capacity of the word. And when you become an adult, it's that thing in you that you need, that like, I want this connection with this person. I need, or not necessarily this person, but just the connection in and of itself. You know what I mean? And because you built that connection with this person, you don't want to let it go for anything. So you sit around and deal with the bullshit. That's one reason that I came up with, right? Because I've only had about maybe 3 or 4 serious relationships in my life. You know, I don't count high school. We all do stupid shit in high school. I know I had done some really dumb shit in high school. I might talk about that later on. But you know, we all do stupid shit in high school, and it's like, you know, I don't count that. I don't know if you count that, but I don't count that. But it's like, I've had some pretty aggressive relationships in my life. Out of the 4, the one I'm in now is the best. It's the longest. It's the one with no violence. It's the one with no arguments. We have our disagreements like everybody else, but there's nothing toxic about the relationship I'm in now, right? We're both adults. Like, come the fuck on. But at what point do you understand this is not going to work for me anymore? At what point do you take responsibility for the relationship that you're in and figure out a way to move forward and not let this thing take control and not let this thing break you down? Because the longer you allow somebody to abuse you, 2 things are going to happen. The longer you allow somebody to abuse you, the more that person is going to get used to abusing you, and the more you're going to get used to being abused, right? If you don't necessarily deal with it straightforward, it's going to keep happening over and over again. I say this all the fucking time. People do not change, okay? I'm going to say that again. People do not change. Hopefully you heard me, right? We find things that we like, whether it be things that we just discovered we like, or it's things that we've liked since, you know, birth. And some people are natural born assholes. Some people are natural born abusers. Some people are natural born whatever, right? And when they get into contact with people, that doesn't necessarily change because they're with somebody. It may be muted a little bit, maybe contained slightly, but over time that cap's going to come off and they're going to go right back to doing what they were, you know, into doing full force. You know what I mean? So when I say people don't change, I mean people literally do not change who they are, right? You could try, you could maybe become a better person, but the majority of people are stuck in their ways. What they like doing is what they're going to continue to like doing until they see something wrong with it. And most people do not see a problem with the things that they do wrong that negatively affect other people or the people around them, right? So when you have these situations where you're just stuck, you're just in this mode, you can't see yourself living without this person because you may have been with this person for so long. The sex game might be so good, and you know, it's just the overall connection is just there and you don't want to give it up. You literally have to take responsibility for your role in everything that happens from that point on. Nobody ever likes to admit this fact, but if you stay in a domestically abusive relationship, the first time it's not your fault. You can make a case for the second time, but the third time something happens, you played a role in that because you decided to stay there. You decided to let this person mistreat you. You decided to let this person abuse your trust, abuse your body, abuse your finances, abuse your mind. You allowed this person to do what the fuck you know they were going to do without doing anything about it. Now, you could fight back, of course. if you're in a physically, aggressive relationship, you can, stand your ground. You can fight back. You're a fucking adult. You have the right to defend yourself, right? But where does that get you? Where does that get you? Now, not only are you in a domestically violent relationship, now you're in a overly aggressive, overly toxic, overly domestically violent relationship that's not going to end well. You might as well just not fuck with this person at all anymore. Just call it quits. Just get the fuck out of there, right? But nobody wants to admit that fact. Nobody wants to admit the fact that we all play roles in everything that we do. Excuse me. I tell people all the time, the common denominator in all of the life events, the common denominator in all of your life events is you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a positive thing. So as it pertains to relationships, if you think about it like this, if you are 30 years old, you have no kids, you're not married yet, which I'm not saying that you have to be married before 30. Shit, I'm not married, never getting married, and I'm almost 30. I'm 28, right? It's just not my thing, right? You don't have any kids. You're not married yet. You don't necessarily have your life figured out yet, which is also fine, but you might want to work on that. And there's just a lot of confusion going on in your life right now. These 4 things, right? Let's just say you wanted to have kids. You wanted to be married, or to be married, or at least engaged. You don't want this dysfunction and crazy shit going on in your life, and you want to actually have your life put together, or at least be on the fast track to putting it together, or on the fast track to getting where you want to be, right? You hark back for the last 10 years. Every relationship that you were in, excuse me, every relationship that you were in, thirsty as hell. I was trying to avoid doing this till after the podcast, but I'm thirsty. Oh man, that's good shit. I might burp a few more times. But if you hark back 10 years, let's say on average you had 5 relationships. You had 5 serious relationships, 2 years apart, right? You just broke up with your 5th relationship. So at what point do you say, maybe I'm toxic? At what point do you say, maybe I played a role in why these relationships didn't work out? Even if you're being the abused person, right? Let's just say you've been in 5, which is really unlikely, but it does happen. Let's just say you've been in 5 domestically violent relationships over the last 10 years. You are the common denominator in that relationship, or in those relationships, because the biggest role that you played is accepting the same type of motherfucker that's going to naturally do the same type of thing to you, right? There are red flags. We cannot hide who we are. People will put on the front. It's like a Facebook, or not Facebook. It's like an Instagram filter, right? Instagram filters are only up for as long as the camera is pointed at you until you snap that picture. Once you snap that picture, that filter goes away until you open it back up again, right? We cannot. People are the same way. We cannot hide who we are, right? And if we do, we can't do it for very long, because eventually who you are is going to come out, just like the way you talk, your accent, right? I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people who talk to me don't know that, right? And it's not because I'm trying to mask the Geechee Gullah, you know what I mean, dog, yeah, man, what's happening with you, you know what I mean, word. Yeah, I'm not trying to mask that. That's who the fuck I am, right? But over time, the more I learn and the more I talk to other people and the more I gain understanding and the more I gain all this fucking knowledge and wisdom, it kind of changes the way that you speak. You know what I'm saying? Like when you learn more words, when you read more books, when you gain more knowledge, it tends to raise your vibration, right? And what comes along with that raised vibration is a different speech pattern, right? You move to a different, if you move from the East Coast to the West Coast, excuse me, you're gonna hear a lot more proper sounding people just because that's how they pronounce words. And if you stay there long enough, you're going to adopt that type of language into your language, right? And so when you think about it, like, at what point do you take responsibility for these relationships? At what point do you say, maybe I'm a broken person that doesn't necessarily need to be in a relationship right now until I heal myself? Maybe I'm a broken person that invites this negative energy into my life because I am a broken person, right? I don't like getting beat on, but what is it about me that attracts people who beat me? What is it about me that attracts negative vibration? Low vibrational people. And then they pull that stuff on me, because the longer you hang around negative people, you could be a beacon of positivity. You could be the brightest fucking star in the sky. But the longer you hang around negative people, and a lot of them eventually, won't be overnight, but eventually their negativity is going to start to beat away at who you are. And it's going to start to make you negative. It's going to start to make you sad, and you're going to eventually lose a little bit of that positivity over time. And if you stick around them long enough, you're going to be just like them, right? You're going to be just like them. There is no fucking way out of all of your drunk ass friends, you're the only one that stays sober. There is no way out of all of your friends who are big baller millionaires that you're the only broke one. There's no way, because they wouldn't associate with you if you were, right? You could be on the fast track, that's different, but there's no way, right? You have to fix yourself. You have to take responsibility for your actions in the relationships that cause them to be negative and abusive. You have to take responsibility, right? You have to first heal yourself. You have to first take responsibility. You have to secondly heal yourself from within. From within. My mouth is really dry right now. You have to heal yourself from within. Figure out why you are this way. Work on that. Is it a childhood trauma thing? Is it an adulthood trauma thing? Is it an insecurity? Is it something that just clicks in your mind when you think about it? Is it the type of people? Is it because you want to be with this type of person, but you know they're not good for you? Is it because that type of relationship is exciting to you? What the fuck is it about you that causes you to continue to allow negative energy to fuck up your life? Right? You will never know until you do the first thing, which is take responsibility. You gotta do it. It's hard. Nobody likes to take responsibility. Growing up, I never liked taking responsibility. It was always somebody else's fault. You can ask my daddy, my mama, you can ask whoever the fuck. It was never my fault. Anytime I got in trouble, it's that guy's fault. It's her fault. She did this. The teacher's fault. He's lying on me. It's a funny story. A teacher did lie on me, by the way. But at what point do you understand that you're going to have to do this thing? I know it may seem like I've been rambling, because I might have been rambling a little bit. But sometimes you have to repeatedly say something for people to understand it. So it's kind of hard for a lot of people to get something on the first go round, right? You have to continuously beat it into people's heads for them to understand that they're making a mistake, that maybe this isn't the best course of action, that maybe you should probably try doing this, instead of continuously doing what you've been doing, which is getting you nowhere. Because that's the definition of insanity. The definition of insanity, if you don't already know, is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Never works out that way. You cannot drink poison and hope for your enemies to die. I'm going to say that again. You cannot drink poison and hope for your enemies to die. So I really hope y'all enjoyed this episode of the Handle That podcast. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram. I keep forgetting to drop the Instagram and social medias. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at Handle That Podcast. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at at the Handle That Podcast. Make sure to follow my personal my personal YouTube is Abdul Aesthetics. That's ABDUL space AESTHETICS. Abdul Aesthetics on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube podcast page. Handle That Podcast. You're probably watching it there right now. And just understand that eventually you're going to be faced with the dilemma. You're going to be faced with the dilemma of, do I continue to allow people to abuse me, or do I take charge of what the fuck I need to take charge of? Do I handle this thing so it doesn't negatively affect me anymore? That's all I want to say. So with that being said, I really hope y'all enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Make sure to stay groovy, stay cool, stay positive, and above all else, handle that.